It's time for Pure Performance.
Get your stopwatches ready. It's time for Pure Performance with Andy Grabner and Brian Wilson.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Pure Performance. I guess you guessed right. This is not the voice of Brian Wilson, but maybe he actually did an intro. Unfortunately today, fortunately for me, because I have exclusive time with our guest today. Normally I have Brian Wilson with me doing this podcast. He typically comes up with a great joke or a strange story in the beginning about some of his latest dreams that he had. Today we'll skip all of this because we have an exciting topic, a little bit of an unusual topic maybe for us, or a new topic. My guest today is Mark Forrester. If I look at his LinkedIn page, it says Digital Readiness Manager. And if I keep reading, it says BizOps, taking digital initiatives from design to BAU support. There's a lot of things in here that I want to ask Mark. Before I ask him all these questions, I actually want to welcome Mark to the show. Mark, thank you so much for being here. Do me a favor. Can you quickly introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, I'm Mark Forrester. You've already given my job out of the way. Digital Readiness Manager at Mitchells & Butlers, one of the UK's largest restaurant companies, over 1,700,000 restaurants that we deal with. So my role, the title doesn't really explain it very well, but yeah, so it's probably a transition manager on steroids, blended across all different departments, delivery and things like that. So as we chat a bit further, we'll probably unearth a lot of what I do and how I interact with different parts of the business to make sure what we do develop is supportable and manageable once it gets into BAU.
Yeah. Hey, every time I talk to you, and I know you have given different presentations, it's always exciting for many people because the business you're working in, right? You mentioned this restaurants and pubs in the UK. A lot of people probably like to spend time in the pub, have a pint or 5 or 10, however else there is, how many else they have. But it's really exciting to see that this business, right, the whole restaurant business, the whole food delivery, and everything has been transformed digitally, especially during COVID. Was this a challenging time for you, kind of reflecting a little bit what happened in the last 3 years?
So as a business, we thankfully already, he says, looking back, made that decision to start driving the digital channels, especially order at table. You walk in, you find an empty table, you get your table number, the menu, you get your menu up on your phone, and you basically just order it while you sat there, pay for it online, and it just arrives to your table. That's the concept, obviously. You'll find those services in other places and other things, but it was fundamentally groundbreaking back then for a bar and restaurant company to do those features. But then COVID landed. The UK government had different rule sets. So when we began to open back up after the first wave, there were strict rules about social distancing. So therefore, you had to use order at table. So we were already ahead of the game. The pinch point there was we had to mass scale it across all of our brands. So you bear in mind, we have 18 brands in the UK. We're not a single entity. So Mitchells & Butlers, if you say that name to somebody in the UK, probably won't understand who that is. But if you talk to them about Miller & Carter, the steakouts, Brown's Brasseries, Toby Carvery, the home of the British roast dinner, and all of those other brands that we have, basically had to have those services enabled on tap at the drop of a hat, basically. So that made it challenging, to scale and to be able to do that at expedited speed. And then obviously there was a massive explosion then into people didn't want to go out, people didn't want to socialize. So that caused the delivery market to explode. And if we've already got a kitchen that's certified and running and we've got a chef, then why shouldn't we be able to take, food and drink beyond the traditional bricks and mortar of the building and take it out to the guests? So we obviously then ventured out and started pushing hard into that delivery sphere and obviously doing Just Eat, Uber Eats and Deliveroo deliveries from our outlets into customers' houses, basically. So we burst the ring fence that was the bricks and mortar of the actual building and said, you know what, we've got the facilities, let's push it and let's drive it and let's drive the revenue growth. And today, exponentially, we still do that and we explore different ways to, get that. I think one of the stats we do publish is that the order at table journey, because we remove the friction of fighting at the bar, trying to get to the front and get in your front space. And then obviously the waiter or waitress will say to you, what do you want to drink? And then you're like, I'll just have one of those, because you're then in a panic because you've got loads of people staring at you. You're like, come on, I want my drink. So what order at table actually does is take all of that friction away, gives that time back to the customer, and they make more informed choices, and they naturally upsell themselves. So as an example, my wife painfully will take me to an outlet, and I'll use the digital services, obviously, because we implement them, and she will order a gin and tonic. But because she now has the time, she'll order a more flavoured gin or exotic gin, and obviously a flavoured tonic to go with it, which obviously is more expensive, which drives revenue growth for basically just offering a digital channel.
Yeah, and for me this is fascinating. It's the second time, or I hear the story now from you, and I actually kept repeating the story to some people that I met, because for me it's fascinating, right? It's something that I think everybody understands. The situation that you just explained. You get to a bar, you have to wait in line, and all of a sudden you have to make a split-second decision. You already forgot what your friends ordered, because obviously, our brains are not trained to keep like 5 drinks in our brain for a minute or two. But I really think that what you said is interesting. You're making more informed decisions because you have all of the time that you need to make a decision. You have all the details of the products that are available to you in your hand, in your pocket, in your hand, and then can make an informed decision. This is this leads to more business, and I think this is just phenomenal to think about this. Now, what I did not know, but as you explained it, that obviously back in the beginning of the pandemic, after the first wave, when we were allowed to go back to pubs, but we had these rules of, like having the social distancing in the restaurants. And I guess that I'm because I'm not working in the restaurant business, I wasn't aware that obviously ordering at the table was obviously one way to enforce that rule, to stay kind of separated as good as possible. And you were already ahead of the game because you had these things there. How challenging was it to roll this out?
Some brands easier than others. So we have a concept which we call hard and soft brands. So a hard brand is a Miller and Carter, which has got multiple entities, but they're all marketed under the same domain in effect. So flip that, and this is where Dan Trace comes in. We have another brand which is premium country pubs. Each outlet has its own domain. So we create an application that has like 160 domains in it, because each individual outlet in that brand. So that's where it becomes more complicated, because it's the way that we obviously architected that. So that's where we felt more of a pinch point of trying to deliver it. But, the needs must, we had to do it, limited resources. We were still, obviously UK government were helping businesses, but we didn't have, shall we say, the full team back working. But we got there, so it was challenging. Dynatrace helps. We understood where the pinch points was. When we did an additional brand where we had load, and yes, we had successes, and we also had some issues, like I say, pinch points. But the beauty was that we were always comfortable that Davis AI will always be there and be going, right, okay, so it's not the web front end this time. We've now overloaded the API, and it's not scaled to size. It's not coping fast enough with the increase in demand. And you roll that out, and you come out of COVID and out the other side. And then we had the World Cup, Football World Cup. And when we were sat, energized, ready, and had no blips at all, because history taught us we know what the load would do, we know how to compensate for that load, and we know how to deliver it. But not only do we have order at table, we have the delivery partners, we have click and collect, where you order it online and collect it. And so we have own channel delivery now, where you order it online on our site, and we use a third party delivery company to deliver it to your door, because then we don't have to pay as much revenue to our delivery partners, because they take a cut, obviously. So it's about building those streams of going, right, okay, we've got delivery partners, customers buy into that, but if we can get them into our implementation, there's less overhead costs for us because it's on our platform. So we're looking to branch that out. There's so many different things and the spokes that we're doing now, and it all boils down to digitalization of that customer and where possible converting that journey digitally to get the insight. We're doing things with biz events where we're training an AI with, so you put a burger in your basket and they'll go, hey, do you want a drink with that? Well, using biz events, we're capturing what people want and what people select. And then we then push that back up into the AI to start training it. So each brand would have a more responsive AI to what customers of that brand normally would select when we ask a question, and it's about drive that basket value. So there's lots and lots of busy things going on in my world, and we have to correlate all that because obviously it's great because the customers love it and the customers use it, but when it goes wrong there's a lot of touch points, and it's a cloud ready and all of those different words that Dan Trish would use. It's a minefield because I showed it perform that our front-end web platform is developed by, let's say call them supplier A. The till system, the POS is supplier B. The API layer is actually supplier C. And we're sat in the middle going, well, who's at fault here? And then that was always the challenge. And this is one of the things that we now use Dynatrace to surface that data. We blend RUM data now. We use biz events. I think like it's going out of fashion at the moment. It's our new toy with so much power. So today, I was talking to somebody in Dynatrace because we enabled biz events on the journey. So for example, the delivery partner, we get an error coming back all the time, which is an item is out of stock. So we know that when they mark an item out of stock saying, I don't know, I've got no fish left. So the outlet mark it out of stock, that has to sync through the POS, through the API layer to a SaaS provider who then integrates it with our delivery partners to get it offline on, I don't know, Just Eat, for example. We know that customers will still place orders, and then the POS the point of sale will reject that because it can't auto-inject because that item's out of stock now. Yeah. We know that journey's failed. We now implement, so from biz events, we know that's failed. So we now implemented biz events on the 4 touch points where we see the out of stock come through from the POS, where that gets transformed into a notification for our third-party SaaS supplier. Now, when I say SaaS supplier, bear in mind that in a normal world, it would end there because it's SaaS and it costs, most suppliers will say no. We got our SaaS supplier to buy in to say, hey, guess what? If you tell us what's happening inside your world, then we're not going to log as many tickets because we'll know what happened to that order. So it helps you help us. So if we've got all the data, we don't need to disturb you. So you get less incident tickets from us because otherwise you're a black box. You're getting everything. So they said, oh, okay, let's see how this works. So we gave them an API key for Dynatrace so that they could push in biz events.
Wow.
So when they receive that out-of-stock notification, they send us in a biz event. And then when they push it to the third-party supplier with success or failure, they send us a biz event. So simple for them to implement. It's just a cloud event, push it in, everyone can read that online. But what that's done is allowed us to use business flow to link it together, 4 stages with a correlation ID. And then straight away, within 6 hours yesterday, I went straight back to our API layer and said, hey guys, why does it take 15 minutes from notification to even generate an external notification? So within 6 hours, BizFlow tells us that that's where the initial finding is, that's where the pinch point is at lunchtime when they're all marking their items out of stock over 1,700 restaurants. That's a lot of items. Yeah. So when they change the settings, and obviously they could mark something back in stock as well as out of stock, that process was taking 15 minutes. And in that 15-minute window, we were out of sync with our delivery partners. So this morning we've come back, we've got a plan, it's in the dev backlog. So within 6 hours of implementing that, showed us what we can do with business events and BizFlow. We've got the first iteration of improving the guest journey, improving the experience and reducing the errors, therefore driving revenue, less people having to key in orders. So that's less manpower required, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how we use Dynatrace. We're very dem-centric and customer journey-centric.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I had to take some notes, and there's so many things that you just mentioned. First of all, you are in a situation like I think many that listen in. That means you are not a classical software house. You're not a classical software vendor, but you obviously software powers your business, but you are depending on 1, 2, 3, or 4 different other vendors. And right. What I thought was really interesting, what you mentioned is many SaaS vendors, when you call their API, they don't want to give you insights in what's happening, right? Because they say, hey, this is my business, you pay for it, but I don't give you telemetry data or observability data. You convince them on the argument that if we know what's going on inside your system, then we can troubleshoot on our own and not ask you and open up a ticket and basically be a pain in the butt to actually then do troubleshooting.
Yeah. So in essence, it would have ended up where they would have had death by tickets, as I call it. So basically, It would have been a surge of tickets because we know through history, going down this process that we've had before, and the previous vendor then opened up an API gateway, and we were querying that from things. But ultimately, we knew from experience that it would be a death by 1,000 cuts because they would literally get ticket after ticket, because once it enters their world, we don't know. So we go, well, this order failed. Well, actually, what they're sending us is, well, we failed to inject your order, but it's your fault because you're out of stock of an item.
Yeah.
Now, that's not for them to fix. That's
exactly.
for us to understand. And that's where the collaboration comes, and they've seen the power of this now. So we do it for out of stocks. We do it for when we're syncing the menus now through them to the third parties. We do it for, obviously, orders, where we can see where orders are failing, and they tell us why it failed. And even if it fails inside their infrastructure, they will tell us that. And we can simply, use biz events. There's a simple dashboard, and even, ironically, someone used to do it in an Excel spreadsheet, and now we just have it on a Dynatrace dashboard, which calculates the failure percentages by supplier and overall, and they don't even have to do anything. They just open it up, set the timeline, and it gives them the answer they're looking for their reports. It's there. So, that's the power of the biz events, that we've got all of that. And then obviously linking that into the business flow allows you to see the timings between each step. And then that's where we highlighted with, well, hang on a second, we know that the first stage is always going to be the trickiest and the longest to process, but I don't think anybody realized it was 15 minutes. And for our business to have got one of our suppliers and a SaaS supplier to come together to amalgamate all of that data, to do the timelines, to then figure out actually it's just that initial processing stage that's the first delay. The rest happens in half a second. We can see that in BizFlow. So straight away, it just became clear straight away, and that was the power of Rail, and etc. That it can do those kind of queries and crunch that information. And straight away we were onto that. And then obviously what we'll drive into next is looking at the drops and see where in that stage are we losing tickets, and for what reason, or out of stocks, and for what reason. So we will then granularize that down, and if we need to insert another biz event in that step to try and get further into it, that's what we do, and everyone's bought into it. It's the major reason of why delivery partners orders don't auto inject is the out of stock issue. So the slicker we can make that, the better. And now we've got the oversight, we've got the metrics, and I've fed back to the Dynatrace team there of actually it would be great if now I've got my biz flow, can I turn that into a metric? Can I turn that into an SLO, so that we can say actually an out of stock should take no longer than 3 minutes, and when it does, then we should be flagging that, and from a metric I can create a problem record. So it's driving that enhancement and using BizFlow data to capture more information and respond to it.
Yeah, and then ideally, if you think further, right, you should be able to do some predictive analysis here, and you should, hey, we are probably running out of stock on this item because it's so popular today. Start restocking it or whatever, right? I mean, that sounds like the next.
If only, I mean, it's got to go to a supplier in a lorry. So unless we've got into the world of drones and they're shipping fish through
I understand.
refrigerated containers, it's a bit tricky. But in principle, it's there, and there are a lot of things that we can enhance and drive. And like I say, the AI. If we know we're running low on fish, then should we start suggesting different things to customers?
Items, of course.
We know we haven't got fish and chips, but we've got, I don't know, a trout. Should we then go, oh, sorry, we haven't got fish and chips, but we've got this other fish, and basically just ease the customer into that other side of the journey. So it's all about not forcing the customer, but finding that right balance of, not so they feel like we're dictating to them what they want, but at the same time, if we haven't got something they want, but we've got something else, then it makes logical sense of saying, really sorry, but what about this, or what about that instead? So so it's a very busy day from day to day, trying to orchestrate all of that, link it back to what's in the pipeline, different services that we're offering. So one of our new features that's coming through recently, or going to come through shortly, should I say, is that good old thing. You go to a restaurant, you've had your food, You just want to pay, you just want to leave. And so, but how many times have you sat there trying to get somebody's attention? So we're going to introduce the ability of pay at table. So basically, you get your bill from the waiter or waitress. It'll have your table number on. You just go on the app, put in your table number, and it'll call you over the internet. Basically, contact the outlet, get your bill, and you can split it and pay it in multiple segments. But basically, you just pay it on your phone and you can leave. You don't need to see a waiter or waitress to finish the journey off. You can even tip on it if you want to.
Yeah.
So it's about taking all of that friction away where it slows customers down and they get frustration, and take them out and digitize them.
Yeah. So for me, what's fascinating, we've been talking about 20 minutes now, and I know you are deep into observability, but when we talk about observability in the past, we talked about CPU, memory, garbage collection. We talked about failure rates. We talked about very technical observability metrics. You, however, in the last 20 minutes, you never used the word CPU. You never used any of these, let's say, classical terms, because you have completely brought observability into the business space, right? And I know you mentioned busy events a lot. So folks that are listening in, busy events is one of the ways in Dynatrace to actually extract. It's called busy events, but technically it's not just bound to business data. But ideally, what people do, like you, right? You are ingesting business data from API calls, from external systems, from your own systems that you run, and then you can run analytics on top of it. So coming back to the initial question that I had, so Digital Readiness Manager, if I listen to what you just said, for me, it sounds like you are kind of I'm not sure what the right term is for this, but you are really understanding the end-to-end business process in your organization, in your business, and then you try to make it observable from a business perspective, end-to-end, with all of the different vendors and places and suppliers involved, and then use this data to make suggestions for improvements, right? I mean,
and supportability. So
supportability,
yeah. So the product owner will want, like you say, so the product owner will come and say, "This is our new initiative," and then I will, like you say, analyze that end to end. So what are we going to get from DEM? What are we going to get from biz events now? How are we going to capture? And then obviously they will have reporting requirements that they would want to see in relation to conversion rates and all of those wonderful things. So some of that comes out of Dynatrace, etc., and sales numbers to an extent, because obviously we see the transactions going through from the web portal, but we wouldn't see refunds. So it's unreconciled data, we call it internally. So we don't use it for sales reporting, obviously, because that's the financial system, but it gives us that near snapshot, near to the second of what's going on. So we take all of those reporting requirements, but what I do is the reporting requirements that a product owner wants about usually it's successes, if I'm brutally honest. They want to see all the good data to PR, how great this implementation is. But the flip side of that is the bad data or the failures, and that's what the support teams want. So basically, in the same time, I sit in that, the gap in between, the grey area, whatever you want to call it, and I flip it both ways. So we provide to the product owners the good data, so they'll say, well, how many transactions fail? We're successful and I'm great. But when we say for support, I go, right, this is how you're going to get your data for when it fails, and this is the reason why it's failing. So when I orchestrate a lot of the biz events and session metrics and things, it's about tying the two together in the one journey, so that we're not coming back and trying to reiterate stuff further down the pipeline, because it's always a challenge to get so we say non-functional things in afterwards, because they want to drive the initiatives, not for the support side. So we blend that together to create that simplistic view, and we just do it in one hit so that everybody gets what they need to be able to decipher what's going on, so support can understand what's talking to what, when it fails, how do I understand what that is, where is the basket, where can I see if it's a payment failure, what was the reason for the failure. All of that gets pulled out and dissected at that stage, so that when we deliver the product, if it failed immediately, support would understand exactly what's gone wrong. So that's the challenge that I have almost every week, to try and dissect all of that.
Yeah. What would you say, looking at, it's always great to be proud of successes, but it's great to learn from failures and improve. If you look at, let's say, things that don't go right in an order, what do you say? What's the percentage of a technical problem. Maybe, I don't know, really, you have an issue in your cloud environment. There's the connectivity issues. So what's the percentage of technical problems versus more business problems, like what you mentioned earlier, out of stock, or anything else that could go wrong in the business process, but not from a technical perspective, but more from something that you don't have under control that's not technically related?
So I would there are more business problems than technical problems, if I'm honest. Technical problems because we've got segmented suppliers. In effect, they're all very good at their own little segments. So there's that. We get technical problems where one supplier hasn't spoken to the other, and there's been a change to the API, and the front end hasn't expected that, and then obviously you get that failure. But then, Davis is great at flagging that straight away. You're onto it in a flash. That problem record comes up very quickly. Job done. And I think that's the beauty, that the Davis AI means that the technical problems are unearthed very, very quickly. The hard ones to get your head around is like this out of stock thing where someone's flagging it. It's not really an end-to-end flow. There's no direct calls between it because it's traversing through many systems and many platforms. Now we've been able to link that together. So that's where we find the challenges. And not only that, it's we will implement. So I don't know whether the people will feel the same. Sometimes we have that element where we will, so we say contractual SLAs don't align. It seems so illogical, but you've got, we implemented a new integration from one of the, the data platform, and there was no out-of-hours support on that platform because before it wasn't digital-centric, and all of a sudden it's now got sucked into this digital-centric world. Whereas if someone makes a change, it's near real-time data changes within the API layer, so that feeds everything else. So we've taken it from this, it just sits over there and you change it and you've got batch processing nightly and you can kind of work with that. So now it's near real-time, and the SLAs around that application and the supportability of that application from that team is not customer-centric, it's not digital-centric, and that's then a business challenge that we have to overcome, understand what they are and understand what's going on and how we can resolve those. So they are the kind of, shall we say, BizOps kind of issues more than DevOps issues that we now face.
So that if I understand this correctly, components that before the digital transformation had a different role and a different requirement and a different criticality, all of a sudden became extremely critical because they're powering everything. And if you don't have the right setup for this, right? If resiliency or SLAs were never that critical, and all of a sudden it has to happen overnight almost, then this is a big challenge. And
it's that business process that becomes the blocker more than the technology. So the technology is accelerating faster and joining the digital world faster than the business processes, and that's where we found a few pain points recently. If that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. Mark, taking a step back in history, because you have not always been in that role, but you kind of emerged into that role. What did you do before, and how did you end up in where you are right now?
So if I go way back, I used to chuck bags of sand on a trolley for customers in a DIY store when I first started out in the world of work. But that's not where people are here to hear. So I've come from that. I've worked my way through that DIY company, managed to get into their IT department, which then became part of a big wider group. And then basically I joined Mitchells & Butlers a long time ago now, probably about 10, 15 years ago, as an infrastructure analyst. So I just looked after your standard infrastructure, more aligned to the web. But back then we weren't as digital centric. It was just, it's a website, for our brands. Changed from that to application support. So I did then look after the POS and the digital platform. We then separated that out and the POS went, and I looked after the digital platform. So I've always been close to the digital platform, and it's grown. And then obviously we did the big relaunch where we're going to drive digital, we're going to get centric. And we did have a different monitoring tool. And then it was coming up to the end of the contract, and I just said, you know what? Why is it that marketing or somebody will come to us and go, your websites are offline? And we're like, are they? it's not a good sign. Truly, and we basically we had this tool, and then every time we had a failure, we really couldn't extract any information out of it. It was very hard, and I had a team of 5 looking after all these brand websites. Like you say, we outsourced the biggest scale of it all. And that's when we chose Dynatrace. Yeah, we looked at the Gartner Quadrant. Dynatrace was number 1 then, and we were like, okay, let's have a look at the website. Oh, that looks quite flashy. Apparently, it does all of this wonderful stuff and tells you when they've got a fault. We're all like, yeah, whatever. We've seen this before. We put it into our Azure test platform that we were playing with, and it did what it said on the tin. So, and from that point, we've never looked back, and it's changed. It changed our monitoring. It changed the way we see issues. Changed the team, because we went from this team that basically we were ducking every time we left our desk, because if somebody wanted us, something was broke. And now this team is central to it all. We can see where outlets aren't configured properly, so we use Dynatrace to alert us for that, and we're proactive. We're saying to the people that are setting up the brand websites, of this outlet isn't configured right, so our digital services won't work, and basically we've now become that completely the opposite, that everybody wants a piece of our time and we can't facilitate all the requests. So it's flipped. The team would love it more in that world now, because it's not it's broke, what haven't we done. It's more about how can we help you. So it's completely changed the whole ethos of the business as well, in that kind of sphere of we've got more insight than we've ever had. Davis AI, I always joked in the past that Davis AI is like having another team on itself, because it just, you've got this problem, the root cause is this, we can then target the supplier, and the suppliers know we've got Dynatrace now, and they can't fight it. Because even in the past, they'll go, oh, it's not us, prove it's us. Well, I don't need to prove it, it's telling me. And that's the beauty of Dynatrace. So it's unlocked a lot of things other than just the monitoring in Mitchells and others.
What is next for you? I know you said there's always, digitalization doesn't stop now because COVID is over. It doesn't mean we don't have to innovate. Any other exciting things that are coming up for you?
So, I mean, we continue to grow and continue to drive. We want to implement a concept of tabs. So if you went to one of our restaurants, you could technically set up a digital tab and sit and drink all day with your friends, and they can go to the bar and order drinks. If they scan your QR code, it go in on your tab, and it's just one bill at the end. It's those everyday journeys that you can do if you walk in and hand your card over, and they keep your card while you're not there, for obviously for payment reasons and everything else. So it's about analysing every one of our journey and understanding, can we digitize that? Can that help improve the customer experience? Will that help drive growth? Will that help drive, with the redeployment of people in the so you can. If people are serving themselves, then the waiters and waitresses can spend more time with you and enhance your experience, so you feel like you were more, they were more attentive to you rather than running around. So there's lots and lots of things that we're working on from that perspective. But yeah, at the moment, shall we say short term, it's about, let's say the word again, biz events and everything, because we see the power of biz events. It's unlocked so much for us to give us that visibility on everything that we do.
Yeah, this is a great thing that you just said. I think you said with all the friction that you take out, the customer in the end feels more taken care of, because there's less time for waiting on something that they feel shouldn't take that long, and therefore it gives you a better feeling, right? I mean, it feels you all then, I guess, more connected to that brand. In your case, Mitchell & Butlers, you have so many different brands of restaurants and bars, but that's really great. And I think this is a message that I would like to give everybody that is listening, because what you are really doing, you are really making sure that you understand the business processes that you have, you make them observable. So you talk with the individual suppliers, with the different teams, to make it observable end to end, and then you give the data and you use the data to optimize it by reducing friction, by making it easier to troubleshoot, but in the end, improve that process. So in the end, the beneficiary of all this is the customer. It feels more taken care of.
Yeah, and that's the ultimate goal. We look at the delivery. We know that if we can fix the out of stock issue on delivery, will move from, what is a 6%, which doesn't sound a lot, a 6% failure injection to POS, that will be down at 0.1, 0.2% failures. That's how big the prize is. That's why we've gone after it. But, without that insight, without Dynatrace surfacing that, it's Biz Events that surfaced that data in the first place. So, Biz Events has led to Biz Events, and it's a natural trail to go digging deeper. So from our perspective, what we're always focusing on is how do we make that so frictionless that it's so slick that the customers use it, the customers that aren't using it, they'll buy into it because they see other people having success with it. Because ultimately, like I say, that frees up the waiter or waitress to give that more personal experience. But ultimately, it all drives to the guest experience. We are in a cutthroat market, as most of the people are in their industries, that, if we can't serve you, there's a pub within a few hundred yards or a restaurant a few miles away that is a competitor, and they will happily take our customer away. So therein lies the challenge. With the booking engine that we have, if it's not available, they'll just book somewhere else. It's so cutthroat. So it's very, the booking engine we use is it's SaaS. That's a SaaS supplier, and they do also deal with our competitors. And we had a funny debate about we use Dynatrace data and we share that with that vendor to show when we're having an issue, they expect to get a P1 because it's gone red outside. They're seeing what we're seeing before we've even logged a ticket. Someone said, why would you do that? Why would you do that? Because they also serve your competitors. And I was like, if a guest chooses to come to my website, if I'm not there, we've lost them potentially. We've done some work on how often people book in advance, but for all intents and purposes, you get one shot most of the time at getting that booking. So if I'm providing that information to the supplier and their service is up and running, then when they come to us, I'm there, I'm available, and they can book. If I'm not, they know, and the faster they fix it, yes, they fix it for everybody else, but at the same time, I'm back up and running. So ultimately, we win because they visited us. And it's not about, yes, somebody else might get benefit, but ultimately it's about that return, that MTTR, that time to, restoring the service. And if sharing my data with a third party means that that's what happens, then so be it. Yeah, somebody else might win ultimately, but, over the grand scale, looking at it, hypothetically looking at it, from a different perspective, if we're there, we can take the booking, we've snaffled the booking, we've got the customer, and that's the objective, to always be there, be ready, and have the service available so that we can execute it every time the best we can. And when we can't, get Dynatrace to tell us why. Let's go dig in, let's find the friction, let's remove the friction, let's move forward.
Oh. And I think that's a great testament to how far observability has become, right? I mean, what came out of observability? If you think back, we started with, I guess in your world, right? When you started years ago in IT, you were probably looking at I don't know, CPU metrics and network metrics and things like this.
Yeah, I remember writing a .NET application that would contact all of the servers in all of the DIY outlets to run the ILO metrics, to then use PowerShell scripts to consume the health status of the server. Because we didn't even have a monitoring tool. We were using ILO to pull in the metrics and say, what is the temperature, what's the and we were then obviously using code to do it. And then you think today, Dynatrace gives you that. And in a way, it's funny you don't mention CPU, because in Dynatrace and with Davis, you just take it for granted because it does, brutally honest, it does such a good job. It almost becomes secondary because we move on, and who in 10 years will we talk about, what we're talking about now, because the product be that powerful that there'll be new initiatives, and it'll be automatically linking Biz Events and understanding, if it's got Smartscape and understand how things talk, then it'll understand where the Biz Events are coming from and tie all of those together. And, the world is your oyster. It's exciting. I do love it because I do love the product. As anybody that knows me will know, inside Missiles and Butlers, they call me Mr. Dynatrace. So there you go. I've even got the label inside the business because I see the power, I see its potential, and we've just got to harness it in the right way to get that data and ultimately to serve the customers. I've always had I started out in that world, putting bags of sand on a customer trolley, helped them put it in a car, and ultimately, what makes the business move? it's the customers. Without the customers, without the revenue, doesn't matter where you are in the business, at the outlet, at the head office, or anywhere else in the distribution center, unless people are coming and you're driving that revenue and you're getting that revenue, then the business has no legs and has no cash flow. And without cash flow, you're pretty much in trouble.
Yeah. So I think that's also a nice, maybe closing of this. I think this should be an inspiration for many that feel like, what's next for me also in a career, because you made a big step in your career, or you progressed, and now you are really helping your business to look at business relevant data and then give this data to the right people at the right time to make the right next business decision to improve the business in the end, to help the customer have a better experience. I think that's the great thing. And so folks, if you're listening to this, right, we always talk about how do we get end-to-end traceability of transactions using open telemetry or other ways. What we are doing now is we're elevating this, and we need to figure out how do we get end-to-end business visibility into your end-to-end business processes that are not just spawning 1, 2, or 5 microservices, but actually multiple systems, multiple steps, processes that can take a minute, an hour, a day, or even longer. And we need to figure out how we get all this data, how we connect it, and then drive the right decisions. And I think that's an exciting world we live in. And the digitalization and the APIs that allow us to connect to other systems make all of this possible. But we also need to think about what type of data do we need to have to then make the right decisions. Mark, any final words from your side before we close it?
That's a good question. Final words? No, just open your mind. Anything is possible. You've just got to take a step back. Maybe, you may have a few humps in the road and some tough journeys and some tough conversations, but ultimately, when you start unlocking the data, that's when I enjoy nothing more than going to someone in the business and watching the penny drop, and you see the eyes light up, and you've just gone, they get it. And all of a sudden, that's a really good moment, and the satisfying that all of that effort culminates in, and it's not necessarily somebody high up. It's you've just somebody in finance. You've just given them the piece of information that they spend hours trawling through spreadsheets for, and you go, oh, actually, if we do this, this, and this, I can help you, and we can capture it here and feed you that data, and that's the thing. It's not just an IT system anymore. It's a business system, and when I say that, I mean literally, marketing, finance, you name it. It spans it all, all the way through to our customer services. Dynatrace will watch their applications for them, internal and external. So yeah, it's a great journey. Be prepared for some bumps, but courage and conviction. Stick true to your word, and you'll come out the other side, and it'll be a great journey. You'll look back, and it'll be. When you reflect back, it'll be a good journey.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark, for these inspiring words. Hopefully, we will see many more digital readiness managers on LinkedIn after this podcast airs. Also, you mentioned that you obviously did some presentations already, perform in other Dynatrace-related events. We will link to those in the description of the podcast. So in case you want to see Mark in action, then we'll give you the chance, and I'm pretty sure you will be back at events talking about your journey with Dynatrace, in this case, with business events and wherever the journey takes you in the future. Cool. And I want to say, Brian, sorry for you not being here, but I enjoyed the conversation. But I'm looking forward to having you back as a co-host in the next session. Thank you, though, for taking the raw recording that I produce here with Mark and then converting it into a podcast that that our listeners throughout the world can listen to. Thank you so much. And with this, goodbye. See you next time. Hear you next time.